I hope that all of Rak's family is actually dead, only because, like... No, not like...
I know, it's just funny the way you said it.
But because, like, I'm so tired of these stories where they're like, yeah, and we wiped out his whole clan. Just kidding. He's actually got, like, 12 cousins that are still alive, and it's like, did you kill them or not? Because... Like,
AOA, that's a triple play. New episodes, I couldn't wait. Yeah. Open your mind at the first gate. Press play, no need to debate. AOA, check me out. Look, plugged in, you can catch the hype. Golden Dawn, how we follow the light. Anime like life, married to it, my wife.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages? Welcome back to the AOA show. I'm your host, as always, Ian, along with the boys Isaiah.
Ohio.
And Gavin.
What is Gucci shoes?
And today we're hitting you with more Tower of God, our in-depth analysis and discussion on the chapters we went over in our live stream. If you've not caught that already, you definitely don't want to miss it. But this time, you're going to want to go over to the AOA Reacts channel, where we will be posting our live reactions and read-throughs, because it only makes sense on that channel from here on out. So you can catch the initial 4 that we have here, but you're going to have to hop ship and go over to the reaction channel to catch our live reaction to it. So definitely don't miss that. Then come right back, and you can catch this episode along with our blog post discussion, which we posted on this channel yesterday. So don't want to miss it. Before we get into it, let's go over our comment of the day. Isaiah, if you want to take it away.
Sure thing. So this comment comes from Nomad Vaughn, the boy. His answer was, Baam is a wave controller. The question was, what position is Baam? And the comment reads, going down the theory rabbit hole, both Baam and Jahad have a similar spark as per Thor. But remember what Garam told Baam, that Jahad made a contract to become king of the tower in season 2, chapter 240. Or number 3. This chapter thing always fucks me up. It's somewhere around 240 to 320, whatever that means. So maybe the seeds are a part of the contract. Totally forgot about the seeds until today. But then that would depend on what time period this Jahad is from. But as we know, time and age mean nothing in the tower. This discussion vid made me think and research. Good stuff. Again, thank you for the kind words.
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah, I definitely find myself doing that, where it's like, this story is so long, you know, that like we get to a new set of chapters and you're like, oh, it's got to be this thing, and somebody's like, well, what about that, like that hole that was in season 1, and you're like, oh right, yeah, totally forgot.
It happens all the time.
All the time. I don't even know where Casno is, dog. I completely forgot. I was like thinking about it during live stream.
don't
I was
know.
like,
Nobody knows
whatever
where Casno
happened
is.
to like that whole plot
Dude,
thread?
I don't even know. There's so many characters in this story.
I
It's,
think
like,
that was like
insane.
the last time we saw him was when White like hella dissed him. Remember, because he like fucked up Wangnan, and then White was like, basically, you got to be a weapon or a person, and you're shit at both, and then like walked away. And Casno was like, and they left him.
Yeah, just him so bad he just quit.
What's crazy is that they left him, but they took the Traveler.
Yeah,
Like they have to travel with them, but not Cassie.
did he
don't
do his
even-
own thing? I don't know. He's got to be doing his
It's-
own thing where
it's
he's like
been a
got to
day.
find himself and come to grips and that whole story arc.
I feel like he should have took the Traveler.
There's so many characters in this freaking story, but Nomad, thank you very much for the comment and for watching our videos all the way throughout. So don't miss our question at the end of this one.
Yes.
Anyway, let's hop into this discussion here. Gavin, if you'd like to take it away with the first question.
Okay, what do we got here? We got Irene Sharda. Edon states that if anyone out of the 13 of them should have been king, it should have been Bam's father, V. Also, he states that V and Jahad often got into arguments and were complete opposites. With Arlene keeping the peace, how does this change your view on the war and conflict that arose between them that eventually led to V's and Bam's deaths? Wow, that is a lot to unpack. How does this change your view on the war? Okay, so I'm going to address the first part of the question because it's a little bit more opaque for us since we don't know V and his intentions, but it's pretty cool getting the contrast, or at least the told contrast between them, because that at least leads you to believe that Jahad was trying to fulfill this kingly duty, that he was, you know, the ruler, and that, you know, he had to pretty much be on top of the whole pyramid, when it is alluded to that V was more obviously opposite in terms of he wanted to be with the people, had good relationships with them, and lived, you know, coincided with them. And, you know, he was like that was his stish. So, you know, it kind of makes you think. For me, I wonder, not relating to the question, Arlene, in terms of her growing relationship with V, because we know that he committed suicide, or know, quote unquote. We don't actually know what happens. But I wonder if something got to Arlene where, maybe she wasn't all that's chopped up to be, or maybe is, and I'm just completely butchering that thought. I don't know. Don't kill me over it. But I wonder if maybe, like, she got a little bit gold diggery and, like, maybe kind of ditched the whole view of, V, and, maybe some other things happen. I don't know. And it's all conjecture. I could be completely off, but it's like a funny thought when you think about it. It's like, hey, she could have literally just like changed preferences, or maybe started to align differently, or didn't agree with everything V had and maybe had him assassinated, or it could have been Jahad that had him assassinated. Either way, it's a rabbit hole, but like it's I don't know.
How did we get here?
I don't know. I'm addressing the first part. Okay,
so I zoned out for like a second, and I came back, and you're like, Arlene had V assassinated. And
No.
She's a gold digger.
No,
what's happening?
I'm just saying. Nobody, like, we don't know. We don't know the whole story until it's actually laid out in front. We only know one side of it that could be completely fabricated. And I mean, for him to commit suicide after we're finding more information on it, we know that things aren't what they're cut out to be as we know it. And really, it leaves things up to interpretation, because we still don't know from the horse's mouth, i.e. Arlene at this point, what her intentions are, what her motives were, if she had any, and how that implicated the relationship between Jahad and V. Okay. Or it could have been just completely Jahad's side. So how does this change my view on the war and conflict that arose between them that eventually led to V and Bam's deaths? What are they talking about in the event? What do they mean eventually led to V and Bam's deaths?
Because they're implying that Bam is the baby that Jahad killed but couldn't actually kill. Remember, because that's the baby that Arlene tried to revive and went outside the tower to do so, which would explain Baam existing.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
actually, I don't know. I'm gonna see if you guys. I'm gonna divert. I don't know.
Sit this one out, champ. I'll tell you.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, obviously, that it seems like V was the one that maybe was a little more, maybe pure of heart, maybe not necessarily, but maybe a little less corruptible in the sense that, Jahad seems to have changed exponentially as we've gone up this tower, and Khun is very cognizant of that, especially at the point where he is as his data self. So at least at that time, like I said, I think I said this in a prior video, but there was a question about, like, what's Khun doing now? Like, is he still against him? And there's, like, a great possibility that he also was corrupted along with Jahad, but because of this point, he's not fully. So V definitely embodies something that's a little more pure, I would say, maybe in that sense. Or, willing to be a little more sympathetic, empathetic towards things, I guess. Maybe takes the role of a leader when needed and is self-sacrificing, whereas Jahad maybe seems to put his own intentions to the forefront. There could be a number of things that are there, but it would seem that V's leadership skills were better of that of Jahad. Otherwise, I don't think Khun would say what he did. And he states that V and Jahad got into arguments and were complete opposites, like I said, for those reasons above. And how does this change your view on the war and conflict that arose between them that eventually led to V and Baam's deaths? No, it doesn't really change too much. We've seen that Jahad is kind of a baby when it comes to these sorts of things, especially, involving Arlene, and he definitely lets his emotions cloud his judgment, I guess, hence why he did what he did. But I mean, now it makes sense to, I guess it sheds a little bit of light on the fact that not only was it Jahad that was angry at Arlene for choosing someone that wasn't him, I think it was salt in the wound that it was specifically V instead of Jahad. And I guess that's a little bit more enlightenment that we get there, being that V and Jahad argued all the time and were complete opposites. So the fact that Arlene ultimately sides with V and goes with V and has a child with V, again, is like, to Jahad stabbing him, that it's like, you didn't choose me, and then twisting the knife, that it's like, not only did you not choose me, but you choose the guy that I'm like completely opposite. We're always getting into fights, and I probably don't see eye to eye with him on a lot of things anyway. So now I guess it just adds to the little more incentive that Jahad had, or a little bit more of the excuse that he needed to go forward with his ridiculous plans to try and axe everyone that wronged him. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, most of my thoughts are pretty similar to your guys. I do think it was more of a thing where, because Edon says that, like, if we could have chosen anybody to be king of the tower, or if I could have chosen anybody, I would have picked V. I don't think that it means that like V's personality was somebody who like you looked at him and you were like, oh, that's our leader. Like he's the one. Like no events. I actually think he was a very like reserved and quiet type person, like very similar to Baam.
That could make sense.
Jahad was always just the loudest one in the room, and so that's why like Jahad was somebody who oozed this like I want to be in charge type aura because he asked for it. He almost demanded it of people. Where I think V, and I think again that makes sense given that Jahad's mindset later down the road sort of starts to stem off from like the average ordinary adventurer type person into this like I am above everybody else, I am better than, I am the king type stuff, where V always seemed to take an interest in the regular folk and the ordinary people, because I think he was very in the back, but him being reserved in the back is not the same thing as him being afraid to challenge Jahad when he does have an idea that's like a little bit too out there or a little bit too dangerous or what have you. So I think that's naturally why they clashed.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
And everything else, like, does it change it? Not really much. I've been always under the assumption pretty much that it's been like, again, until we know, I'm willing to put a significant amount of money that like V and or Arlene probably had more of the right side in this debacle here, especially if we know that a lot of Jahad's mindset later down the road was like, oh, we should be above these people. We should rule them. It's like, that's already kind of, you're steeping into some dangerous waters there. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So moving on to the next question we have by Vladimir. Thank you very much for the question. Vladimir says, what are your thoughts on Yura and her mother's story? How do you like more lore on the family curse? And would you have accepted Big Breeder as your son if you were the mom, or shun him as an imposter? Lupatai adding to the question, do you think there is a possible similarity between Baam's story and what would the implications be? We still don't know who or what he is. Wow, that was like 7 questions in one. So let me unpack that just one at a time, because these are deep questions and they're really good questions. So I feel stupid just like flying off the cuff with an answer when I haven't formulated a thought yet. So let me take this one at a time here. What are your thoughts on Yura and her mother's story? Could kind of give a shit less about Yura just in general, but I think the story in the abstract, taking Yura out of it and placing any character that we do like, definitely makes it pretty sad. All things considered, it's a tragic story for sure. Just another example of why these families are ridiculous and why some of these rules are just insane and ripping families apart and the whole nine. How do you like more lore on the family curse? It was interesting. I mean, I'm going to be honest, full disclaimer here. At this part in the story, and I'm sure these guys can add definitely more to this answer here, but I wasn't necessarily enthralled with just like Yura as a character. So I'm not going to lie, just bias kind of took me out of some of the lore, just in general, because I guess I was just kind of itching to get to some of the other parts within this. So I kind of feel bad in that sense, but that is where I am with it. So it is terrible, but that's really, I guess, all I have to say about it. Would you accept Big Breeder as your son if you were the mom, or shun him as an imposter? Well, I'm not a mother, so I don't know if I could genuinely answer that question, like, really? But if I had to, I know I'm getting there, okay. But if I had to put myself in that situation, wow. I don't know. There's this weird aspect to it where it's like, obviously there's this trust that can never be regained, but at the same time, she seems to have treated the Big Breeder in her son's body as her child for a while until she realizes that it's flopped. So, that's definitely something that's not great. I think that I would maybe but I would be obviously incredibly disappointed with the Big Breeder inhabiting the child's body, obviously, but maybe not give up on the child, I guess. So, because it's not technically just the Big Breeder anymore, like that's still the physical manifestation of your son. But that's a super deep philosophical or moral question, rather. And I don't think I have the brain capacity here to give you an educated answer on that one. I don't know if anyone can. It's a very emotional thing. So I'm going to leave it to you guys to answer the rest of this question, because it's a really long one. And if you have anything to add on the initial ones, because I probably didn't do that much justice, I apologize.
So what are our thoughts on Yura and her mother's story? It's sad. I mean, every time we get somebody's backstory, except for Rachel. I don't care if she was beaten by monkeys every day. Like, there's nothing that they could tell me that would make me feel sorry for her. But, like, you know, everybody to some degree, and like some people have it worse in the tower for sure. But like this tower, you know, it's been made disgustingly apparent that like doesn't give a fuck about anybody who isn't not only of some direct lineage of royalty or nobility, but also isn't willing to fall in line with the current like empire and established rule. You're basically scum to this tower. And you know, through the family curse. And so my thing though is, while I didn't really, I am not, and still, or I have not been, and I'm still not crazy about Yura as a character, I was interested in like the lore and the family curse stuff, just because I was always curious as to how somebody who was from the Ha family, like how that division of the Ha family happened. Because, you know, we know that like some of the or most of the families, their size is so large that like, of course, there's like basically like mini sects of these different families. So I was always just curious as to like how, I mean, because, you know, you have like Yuri and Jin Sung and like, you know, that family, which seems to be a much closer to like the I think it's called the direct line, right, of the Ha's. And then like somewhere in that mix, and then you have Yura. So I've always just been like, how did that happen? Where did that come from? Would you accept Big Breeder if you? Absolutely not. I mean, like, he literally rolled up in here and stole my child's life. I mean, he took my child's body and stole his life, and then lied to me about it. That's a no-go for me. Do you think there's a possibility or similarity between Bam's story, and what would the implications be? Yeah, I think there's definitely an implication, like we said. So, again, at least from the stories that we have, we know that Arlene gave birth to a baby, which, you know, let's just say is Bam. Jahad killed the baby. Arlene took this baby through the tower and back outside and basically all the way around trying to find ways to revive it, somehow cut a deal and was able to revive it. And now Bam is, you know, X amount of years later, Bam is running around the tower doing his shit. So, like, all we know is that that body ceased living and is now living again, which does not sound, you know, crazy dissimilar to the circumstances here with this Big Breeder inhabiting this other person's body. Do I think it's the same exact scenario? No, I don't. I think it's probably something a little more complex. But I could see them working this into where it's like, again, with the way this tower works, like certain spells or certain, you know, like, I don't know, beings, like maybe Bam, maybe it's a thing of like Bam's body is almost like a, like it's just a straight host for all these different like deities or demons or whatever to like, you know, exist in it and are like and are fighting for control of his body. I don't know. But I guess all I'm saying is I see the connection between a story like Yura's brother and Bam's existence.
Okay. Yeah, no. Yeah, thoughts on Yura. So Yura's interesting to me because she is almost seemed like she's a character who you almost just hate to begin with because obviously she's paired with Rachel. And getting this backstory gives insight for me because you kind of know that she at least has decent intentions behind joining Fug and her reasons behind it. She wants to get revenge on Jahad specifically for the transgressions that they have caused. And although she has been manipulated in a sense and isn't going down the correct path, Fug also does have a little bit of a running track record of manipulating people to get what they want, essentially. So I do feel bad for Yura in a sense, and it is really messed up on the situation that has occurred and, you know, dealing with it. That family curse is obviously something that is going to be something that she has to deal with. And Big Breeder, would I be able to accept them or shun him as an imposter? I mean, I would shun him, obviously, because it's a different thing where I almost think of it as like, you know, it like, he knowingly did what he did for a purpose, and it wasn't anything good in a sense. He wanted to, you know, be reborn as a human and live that life, but it isn't anything sort of like an adoption or like an insemination where it's like by blood, we're not related, but like, you know, I raised you in a sense. And I think knowing the fact that Yura's mother realized that this wasn't just like a random person, you know, or something, like it wasn't out of genuine care that she had raised them that they're seeking for. It literally is just an ulterior motive that, although may have included love and, you know, support from a mother, there was ill intent behind it that essentially just was bad all the way around. So if I was in that same scenario, I would shun the imposter. Not messed up. Don't pretend to be someone's baby. Do you think that there's a possibility between or similarities between Bam's story and what the implications would be? I align with Isaiah in that I could see similarities just because we know that Arlene made a pact with a god of sorts, that involved Bam being reincarnated or brought back to life. So for all we know, that pact could have been a part of this god or deity that she went to was actually reborn in a sense in what Bam is, or, some off-put personalities or what have you. It really could be anything. And I don't think it's out of the woods that, he has some, well, we know he has superhuman power, but, there is an explanation, i.e. a godly explanation for why he has such powers and abilities, and that he could just literally be a god on his own, reborn. Obviously have his own personality intact to who he is, but it has bearings to someone prior or a being prior that is currently living or has lived. So very interesting. I'm wondering what SIU will do in terms of tying that knot later on in the story, but I don't think it's anything that's worth nixing altogether. So I guess that would be my 2 cents on it.
Well said, friends. Isaiah, you
Cool,
want to hit us with
cool.
the next one?
Sure. Next question is from Irure. Totally sorry if I butchered that. Okay, I've been waiting for an explanation for this. How the hell did Isaiah predict not only that Khun eventually could wield ice, but also Rak controlling rocks? Speaking of Rak, what do you think? Why do you think Jahad killed off, as he usually does, I guess, the native ones? First off, I don't actually remember calling the Rak rock thing, like, at all.
You did, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was more of like a passing thing, but you're like, oh, it'd be cool to see some like element thing, like you were like Khun with ice, or like if Rak did earth or whatever. Like it was really quick and passing.
Yeah. So I like.
He read
first
ahead.
off,
No, just kidding.
when you simp on someone as hard as I have, you develop
Here we
a
go.
telekinetic link with said character to the point where you can see. I'm just fucking with you guys. No, I don't know. I just pulled shit out of my ass. I mean, like, I know that they're, it's clear that they're doing this whole like element fantasy thing. So like, to me, it wasn't a stretch that like people in Bam's party would get some kind of element of powers. And I actually thought Khun, like, after we passed the point where I made this prediction, I actually thought he was going to get lightning powers after meeting Edan, because I was like, oh, okay, Edan's got the whole, like, he's going to like unlock it out of Khun or whatever. But yeah, it was a educated guess from shit that we've read before. I don't know. It would have been weird if like none of Bam's party had any sort of like offensive capabilities, and that it was all just like hit person with knife or like wood or it's like, no, they got to get like powers and shit, and like, just made sense.
He's like, listen, I've seen enough anime to know that there's only
I've seen Avatar.
Yeah,
But like facts.
no, for real.
This
though,
story
yeah.
is incredibly well structured, but like I've read hella fantasy stories that
yeah.
like operate under this
Yeah.
same exact guise.
I
It's
certainly
not-
didn't call it. That was all you. But like when it happened, it's like I don't think any of us were really surprised, in that sense. Because
yeah.
you're right, they are pulling that. But it was a good call
and then
nonetheless.
the last part of this, I actually think he kind of answers in the question. He said, speaking of Rak, why do you think Jahad killed off, as he usually does, the native ones? It's kind of Jahad's MO. Anytime somebody, in any sense of the word, poses somewhat of a threat, he's like, ooh, let's go ahead and axe that whole family and all their lineage. Like, he just Uchiha massacres anybody that like has any semblance of an ability to maybe even in the future.
Talk
get,
about
like,
tying up loose ends.
yeah, for real. Like some kind of power over it. Like Edan's even like, yeah, these guys were super strong. They could like wield all these elements and transform. I mean, Jahad killed them all. It's like, damn, bro. Yeah, so I think it's just his MO, bro. He's so paranoid and so like anally cautious about anybody or anything taking over his position or just beating him. I honestly think, like, obviously he doesn't want anybody like taking over his position as king or dethroning him, but I also do kind of think there's a pride thing in it where he just doesn't even want to be beaten in battle,
Yeah. I would even say that maybe it's like even more ridiculous, where it's like never be the target of Jahad's insecurities.
Yeah.
Or just in general a king. Like if you're in like some situation where like there's a king, never be the target of his insecurities. Like if you're there and you're like a great orator, you're a great speaker, and he just gives a killer speech, maybe dumb your shit down a little. Maybe mess up a couple words on purpose. Be like, Jahad, you killed it though. You know what I mean? Or if you're really attractive and Jahad is wearing shorts with a cape and, you know, Roman chest plate that doesn't go together at all, you know, maybe not looking too glammed up when you go to the party and like wearing your bumming it outfit, right? So you don't attract too many eyes. Like, unless you're going to beat him in a fight, you got to survive. You know what I mean? And like Jahad's like, oh, that's an attractive person. You know what I mean? Or like, oh, that person has some cool ability.
That's
like,
literally
you're dead.
what I think happened is they were like, wow, look at these like native ones. They're so cool. And Jahad was like, yeah, dope. Hey, can I talk to you guys real quick? And like led them into some back hole. I was like,
yeah, dude. Dude, that happens like in history all the time.
Yeah.
You can read about it, you know, or like somebody's like, yo, King, I came up with this crazy invention. Actually, what happens is that it cures cancer and no one actually has to work anymore. And he's like, ooh, I would like to get the credit for all that.
Yeah.
And number two, if people can't work, then what am I going to do here? So he's like, kill him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like,
he's like, interesting, but I think you mean I came up with it. He's like, what? Oh.
and then just lights out, you're dead. So, I mean, I don't, you know.
Yeah. I am
not far
curious
off.
to know how the actual Rak survived this massacre and where he'd been chilling before, you know, he was Bam and company met him.
He got shot from Krypton.
Because, literally, he's like Superman. His whole family, planet, or whatever species got wiped out, and I guess Jahad just missed Rak's room. Like, I don't know. It's just
It's like Bizarro, actually.
I'm tired.
Wild.
Got any thoughts or no?
Yeah, well, I mean, we know that at one point they were all combined, and that created that elemental, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Rak. So, like, and that he was a literal monster.
You were waiting for that. You were waiting to use that. You were waiting.
What are you talking? No.
Let
me
He
continue.
was like, dude, I have
like,
a great
We
one.
were talking, and he was like, Rudolph the Rat. Oh, God.
Don't lie to me.
However, we know that they were all one and that they were separated into 5 different beings. So it could have been something where at one point they were, well, I mean, we know they were all together, and maybe it was a part of like, they were the rulers of like said area or said space that they had, like Jahad and crew had to eventually walk through. And maybe he was actually pinned to fight him in a weird sense, because if we know anything about Rak is that he loves to try to F up people who are stronger or very strong. That it's like, it's his animal instinct, that primal instinct. So I'd imagine if the personality stays somewhat similar, as you know, he was combined into 5 different beings, that maybe that whole entity kind of went after Jahad in a sense, or maybe saw someone powerful and was like, you know, like, we're going to come after you or something like that. And maybe Jahad was forced to almost kill them. I don't know, adding a weird perspective, although I'm not going to give Jahad any credit because he definitely just probably also saw someone just as powerful and was like, I'm getting rid of you because I'm tying up loose ends and I'm an asshole. However, what's interesting in terms of why Rak survived, my uneducated guess would be since they had split before they had died, obviously, maybe it was more a turn of Rak ran away at the moment. He killed all 4 and was like, it doesn't matter if one survives because it's not like he could come back together in any sort of way. Like, I've already wiped out everybody. So he's literally just nothing that could ever amount to anything. That could be his mindset. And I don't know. I guess that's what I would give Jahad. Either that or my boy is blind and he needs to take off that blindfold because he just missed an ugly duckling that was just running around. And I mean, you're beautiful. So I love you. But yeah, I guess that's what I got on it. And anything else to add?
No, you're good, man. Take it away.
So we got our next question by Riru. Iruru's uncle mentioned something called the dream decision. Knowing that Irure and Laurel are in the same family, what are your predictions on what this family's dream decision is? What do you think Irure and Laurel's influence on the future of this story will be? Dog, why am I trying to remember the dream decision? Knowing that Irure and Laurel are in the same family, what are your predictions? First off, how are they actually a part of the same family? Because they have no physical like resemblance.
Pink hair.
Yeah, does Laurel have pink hair?
Nope, Laurel's different.
Of course not.
Yeah, of course not. Well, the whole story is based on if you're a part of this family, you have the same physical traits.
No,
and I'm like,
no.
If you put them
unless
both
you're
together,
unless you're Lorray, because he's just built different. That's it.
all right, then explain.
Maybe
They
he
all
dyed his hair.
really love to sleep. Doesn't check out for this new nigga that we just met. But we don't know that he like just woke up from a nap.
Yeah, that is true. We didn't see him yet up
That's
until
what I'm
this
saying.
point, so he might just got out under the rock he was hiding under. Yeah, bro. Well, first of all, You were answering the question. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, my question or my answer to the question is, dog, I don't know. However, I've got to say it is kind of ironic and funny how they word it as the dream decision, as they are all sleepers, and that was definitely that is a little like but yeah, honestly, my mind isn't catching up with me. I really don't. I don't know. I have no clue on anything.
Yeah,
they haven't played like a front role.
No,
in making any decisions.
I do not blame you at all, because I'm not gonna lie. I looked at this question, but it had so many upvotes, so it was like obviously we add it. But I'm like looking at this and I'm like, honestly, I don't think anyone can fault you for just like going nuts and just saying some like crazy random thing, because
He's zooming in.
Oh, seeing the panel, seeing that I'm here as your sworn enemy, it looks like you're still thinking about it, making your dream decision come true.
So
What do you
I
think?
think that this scroll up so I can see the new character's name again. Irure. That him and like a bunch of other maybe higher up or elder members of their family were very like, you know, bruh, you gotta do what you're told and like, you know, whatever. But I think like maybe people like Laurel and what's this chick's name?
Irure.
That's the little girl or the
Yeah, the little girl.
Yeah.
Oh, the
See,
little girl is Irure?
Yeah, she's Irure.
Yeah. So I think people like Iruru and Laurel are like a little bit more like hesitant, let's just say, to like join the family's ideals or mesh their ideals with the families in that sense, and kind of just want to like do their own thing, or like maybe have their own secondary desires that they're after. And maybe this dream decision is like their idea to like break away from like what the family wants or is doing, and like just go off and live on their own where they can sleep all day and like just do what I don't know, man. We definitely don't have a lot of information of this character or Laurel to have anything concrete, but like I think it's got to be, because if her uncle, who's part of her family, is her sworn enemy, I'm assuming that like this dream decision is what put a wedge between her and her family, and probably maybe even Laurel and his family.
Yeah, that, and I mean, I'm assuming that they have trust issues. Obviously, her uncle being her sworn enemy, so family is a no bueno. But if we notice a consistency between both of these characters, is obviously they're sleeping all day, but coincidingly, they don't interact with the characters as much, other than Lario just hopping on Hotz's back 24/7 and just sleeping. So it doesn't seem like they're as accepting to people around them, and that might stem from, you know, trust issues that derive from their family, and even the people who should be the closest to them, they're not able to have a connection with on any level. So that might transcend into possible, you know, friendships that they're not able to create because they're lone wolves in a sense. So, you know, and we've even questioned Iruru in terms of being on like Bam's team, and it's like, is she actually working with him or against him? Like, she doesn't, like, she adds in a little bit of something here and there, and, you know, contributes to fights very little. Is that stemming to an ulterior motive that doesn't align with what Bam and Squad are fighting for? So what that decision is, I don't know, dog. I am in our boat though. I want a nap, but that's about it.
Hi, how you doing? I put in an application actually to become part of your family. What made you choose us?
Yeah, it just shows up with like a sleeping bag. They're like, you're in.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, moving on to the next question here we have by Elgaius says, another small moment that may fly a bit under the radar. When Hackney looked at Data Jahad, his eyes suddenly went out. He theorized it may have been because Jahad's future is one he can't predict. We had some similar dialogues among the guides, Haoryun and Evan, about being unable to predict Baam's future. Do you think it's the same effect and something shared by other Irregulars? Is it just an immunity to certain spells, or is it more literal examples of Irregulars being able to break fate? Maybe it has something to do with how guides' abilities work. That's a great question. And I do think personally it's an irregular, like there's definitely something to do with Irregulars that is definitely influencing something. Now, to be fair, he never tried to do it, as far as I'm as far as I know, on like Khun Edon or anyone from the 10 great families, any of the leaders, because they are technically irregulars as well. Nor has he tried to do it on Rachel. So that would really be the nail in the coffin here in terms of solidifying that theory. But based off the information we have right now, I do think that the irregulars, and I think somebody posed a question like this a while back where it's like the hidden floor is like a microcosm of the tower and how people are aligned to do certain things and they don't have a choice. And this whole fate thing came up. And I think, again, that was at the end of the day where I landed, where the irregulars are kind of this interesting, anomaly that get put into this system, for lack of a better term here, and kind of defy what is supposed to go down. Yes. And I think that's the main arc, right? That these people are pursuing. And I mean, ironically, they line up being really powerful just physically anyway. But I think just in general, I think it goes a little further than that in the sense that it disrupts the norm in what's supposed to go in the tower. So I do think that Baam and Jahad share that. That's my personal take anyway.
I actually pretty much agree with one of the points here in the question, which is, do you think it's the same effect shared by other irregulars? Is it just immunity to certain spells? Or a little example of irregulars breaking fate? I do. I think that this ability, or let's just say like the way or the will of the tower even. I'm going to go massive big brain here and just say that, like, let's say like Hedon, right? Let's say Hedon is like the actual person or entity that controls the tower, right? And not like on a super microscopic scale, as in like he makes sure every living thing on the floor is doing what it needs to be doing, but that like he foresees the tower and its existence and makes sure that like somebody's not actively working to destroy it, right? As shitty of things as Jahad's doing, he's not actually fucking with the tower. He's using it as a base of operations. So in Hedon's mind, he's like, man, he got up there, whatever. Yeah. But I think so. Like, if that's the way, if let's say Hedon is the one who like oversees and controls the tower in a sense, the tower like has a will of its own, and that will is what's all these regulars, like, right? That's why Hedon has to choose regulars. He doesn't just grab any old person. He has to make sure that those people fit into his, or in this tower has to make sure these regulars, these people fit into their, grooves or fit into their little ruts. Irregulars, by definition, completely disrupt that because they don't have to listen. They don't have to abide by those restrictions and can do whatever they want. So if this ability of Hockney's works similar to how guides do, where they can like see predetermined paths and futures of characters, well, it makes sense that with someone like Baam, Jahad, Edon, any of these irregulars, that like that's not something they could do because they don't have anything set in stone. They can do whatever and go wherever they want.
Good thoughts.
Yeah, I guess my more surface level for me, it's just that we know irregulars don't follow the rules of the tower. And for me, the eyes and guides are something that was created in the tower and follow the tower's rules. So by the given fact that off the bat, irregulars don't follow said rules, and is kind of why they can get stronger and have the ability to, because they're not following said rules of the tower, it would explain why things in the tower and certain abilities wouldn't be able to, foresee things. In this example, the eyes, because they specifically follow the tower's rules. They are given under the tower. They are something that lives solely in this tower, although it could outside, but in this realm, in the tower only. And because people are coming in from the outside, it's literally outside the code of what the tower knows and is able to really affect. So just like by nature, it wouldn't be able to foresee it. So I guess that's my thought. I would also assume that certain things would also allow them, they would be immune to other certain spells and other things. I mean, we've seen little bits of it, but nothing that like I can actually explain or be like, oh, they are completely immune to that. But we know that they don't follow the rules. So there's going to be things that they're exempt from. And I also do think that also toys in the whole breaking fate idea, too, because it works together really well. And I think that also is able, like, that also explains why, since they're breaking the predetermined fate of what everybody else lives in the tower because they're not from the tower, which gives them to the ability to. So like it works with story purposes, but like that's also a double meaning behind their immunity and not being able to be foreseen in the future. So I think it's like all of the above, a bit of everything that kind of toys together. So yeah, yep.
Solid, Isaiah.
Dope. All right, next question comes from the Delphine Sylph. Sylph?
MILF.
Definitely not that. Thank you for the question. They say, Khun was ready to walk away from training with Edon until just a few sentences from Baam made him change his mind. How do you think Baam and Khun influence each other? Are they each other's strengths? What about weaknesses? Do you think Khun could be Baam's weaknesses? Could Baam be Khun's? If so, how? To what degree or in what scenarios? Whew, okay. So for starters, how do we think Baam and Khun influence each other? They do, 100%. I think whatever, if we're gonna bring shipping into this, whatever side of that seesaw that you stand on, I think it's inarguable to say that they do definitely influence each other. They have a relationship that is clearly close enough to the point where they depend on each other, and their opinions of each other in scenarios is like sometimes the thing that like make or breaks their decision to do something. We see this in like the Name Hunt station way back when everybody is sort of trying to rope Baam into this cockamamie viol scheme of like, you know, being the wig and assuming the identity or whatever. And Khun seems to be the only one that is genuinely like asking Baam what Baam wants to do or what route Baam has or, you know, wants to go about for that, you know, in that time and for that plan. And like sticks with him and backs him up on that. And so then vice versa, you know, we come back to here. I think Baam and Khun are definitely strengths for each other because I think they, you know, like any good relationship, they do bring out, they want what's best for the other person. So they bring out, you know, forcefully sometimes that better side of that person, right? We know that basically from the start, from Khun's interactions and relationship of getting to know Baam, he has slowly started to open up and become a much warmer, a much more accepting person to somebody who was willing to cast away any of the regulars that were in that hide and seek test that they took all the way back in season 1 to now somebody who's literally willing to put his life in danger to save Missing, so, which is a decision he probably would not have made prior to meeting someone like Baam. I think Baam brings out that, you know, that same desire he has in himself in Khun, this like willingness to want to do and be a better person. And likewise, I would like to think that Khun's influence on Baam is that Baam is a very nice and happy and almost like to a fault naive kind of guy. And again, in something in like the Name Hunt station, there's a conversation they have at the end where Baam says something along the lines of, oh man, but like, wouldn't it be great if I could be a god though? I could like grant everybody like their wish and make everybody happy. Wouldn't it be crazy if I had the kind of power to do that? And Khun more or less says like, well, what's the point in that? If you aren't happy, if you're not worried about your own happiness first and foremost and making sure you're okay, you know, what's the point in that? Like, you know, you are a human, you are Baam. Like, don't ever forget what Baam wants over like other people's wants and desires. You're not here to serve everybody. And so I think, you know, or at least I would like to think that through Khun, Baam will acquire this like sense of himself and independence and this like, idea of like, okay, well, everybody, you know, X, Y, and Z person are telling me to do this or asking me if I should do this. Like, what do I want? You know, I feel like, again, prior to learning about Rachel's true intentions and prior to him climbing his tower, that's not a kind of Baam that we might have ever seen, right? This would have been somebody who was very quick and easy to go along with the flow. That was actually one of my complaints, if you will call it, with early season 1 of this story, is that Baam was a very, like, reactive protagonist. Like, he didn't do anything. He didn't ask or want or make any initiative or changes in the story. Things happened to him, and he had to, like, you know, move as a result of that. So that's where I think their strengths. Their weaknesses, however, I do think that does flip in the sense that they worry so much about each other that, like, even if logic of whatever situation dictates that, like, maybe they shouldn't, or maybe like they should like wait and plan something out, that each of them are willing to go against those risks, like for the other safety, even to a fault. I think we see this best in the Train City moment when after the push 2.0, where once they catch Baam, Khun is sort of like in his head, or I don't know if it's in his head or out loud, he's like scolding Baam for being so careless and reckless and doing all of this just in the pursuit of Rachel, which I also think is sort of a flip on himself because of the crazy lengths Khun is willing to go to either save or make sure Baam is safe, which I definitely think is a weakness because, you know, you have to, you know, that is something that is clearly, that is, or rather has been and can definitely be used against them in the tower going forward. So that's something that we should probably keep in check. But like, if you're asking me, if their biggest problem is these niggas love each other too much, done deal. And do you think, answer that, could Bam be Khun's? If so, to what degree and what scenarios? I think that's it. I think I hit all the nails there.
Okay.
Go for it.
Go for it. All right. So, yeah, pretty much copy paste everything I said. They definitely
No, you basically said every point there was to say. That's why I'm like, Gavin, I know you sim Khun, so like I'll pass to you.
I was kidding.
No. They definitely do ground each other, and I do think that their strengths ultimately outweigh their weaknesses. I guess to maybe offer some various weaknesses that either of them could share, although not really weaknesses. I digress either way in this thought, and just follow. If you, I don't know, I'm just gonna go with it. So with Khun, I feel like there is a sense that obviously there's the weakness that he addresses himself or believes to be a weakness. Whether you do or not is up to debate, which we're going to talk about, and that is almost the physical sense and physicality that he has, because obviously Bam is developing at a super fast rate, and we know he's OP, and Khun, in a sense, has to match that to be able to, follow him on his endeavors up the tower. So will Khun just be someone who Bam has to carry at a certain point, unless he is able to find it within himself to develop his powers, which ultimately is why he trained with Idon and did it, because he realized, like, hey, if I don't actively better myself for Bam, then I'm not going to be able to follow him on this journey and continue it with him, because I'm just going to be a body that he's going to have to protect, and ultimately it can be just a pawn that could be used against Bam in a sense. So that is very much a weakness that can occur unless now we see Khun taking it upon himself to further develop, and hopefully that won't be a problem in the future, although probably won't be, because Bam's just too OP to begin with. On the other side, in terms of Bam being a weakness for Khun, the only thing I can surmise, which I don't really agree with, because I ultimately think that the strength outweighs the weakness, but I'll just spout it out there anyway, is maybe Bam can produce like almost false expectations for Khun in a sense, because obviously Bam is continuing this journey for what he believes is right, and there is a little bit of ignorance that comes with that, but Khun also likes the ignorance in a sense. It's more Khun, I feel like, is almost pessimistic, where Bam is very optimistic, and that overwhelming optimism that Bam has is infectious, and has caught on to Khun, and has continued through this journey to affect him in a very positive way. However, through certain scenarios where that can bring problems, especially when it's something that Bam specifically wants in terms of a goal or ulterior motive. So with that, I could see a scenario where Bam overreaches for some scenario that he may feel is right, and although they might not, and there could be a possibility where they don't achieve that initial goal. So far they really have, for the most part. They've skated by, but say something bad happens, they lose a bunch of people or whatever, I feel like that could set up a false expectation in Khun's mind, where it's like, we've made it this far based off of our relationship. However, that's nothing that's bulletproof. That's something that can be shattered. And, ultimately it almost throws Khun back a couple pegs to where he was originally, with trust issues and, ideological issues, where it's like, who is there really a right and wrong? Who is right or wrong? Because we know he's following Bam for just his thought process with Rachel and those different, relationships that have occurred, and ultimately does a falter in that sense bring Khun down, and that is like a weakness in a sense from Bam. But ultimately, like I said, I don't really agree with that, because at the end of the day, it's why Khun is following Bam, is because of that optimism, because he is able to overcome those feats, and he has seen that it is possible, and he wants to be, they built a relationship and he wants to follow down it. So I guess that's really the only degree that I can see Bam like putting him in a bad situation, or a really emotional situation. But like in terms of raw power, which is like 80% of what matters in this tower, or amongst luck and other things, but like Bam's got it pretty made almost in terms of power. I mean, obviously we have a lot to go, and he's not stupid broken, can beat Jahad at this point, but it's alluded to he's going to be there at some point, just like plot armor surfaces. So they're going to have it, we're going to see a tension in their relationship in the future. It's not going to be perfect throughout the whole thing. So it's ultimately what event leads to their breaking point, which I guess is what is considered the weakness. And we'll have to see, but it's obviously going to be something where it's a decision that's made that, puts a damper on things, but who knows, maybe not. And they just live happily ever after, but it just doesn't seem like SIU's forte for it to happen that way.
You don't even have to worry about switching that camera, my dude, because you got the last question and you guys hit every point possible on that one. So
Catan 237. What does it mean for the future of Rak's story? Is there a possibility that Rak will awaken more elemental powers, or there are different people like Rak out there? They can't be from 10 families because they are descendants of a different species. Will we get to see this giant in full form in the future? So we talked about it a little bit prior, so I'm going to try not to do it half to death and let them answer a little bit. So I honestly feel like it wouldn't make sense if Rak is able to develop more elemental powers, because it seemed pretty steadfast in their explanation that like each element got branched for each specific person and he got stone. So like I feel like it would be weird if he was able to adapt, some other form of element. Like it seems like that would just be a little plot hole in the story unless he was able to fix it. Regardless, I feel like he should only stick with rock, and that is his thing. Are there other people like Rak out there? I mean, there's a possibility. Like, it's said that Jahad killed all the descendants, but then again, words kind of mean nothing, especially when they're stories. We don't actually know what happened, and I mean, as far as we know, V committed suicide, and we don't think that's possible. So, like, just because someone says that they're dead, unless you see the body, like, turned over and, like, with wormies in it, we don't know if they're actually dead. So I would say it's not outside the realms that someone would pop out, although maybe unlikely, I don't know, but it's a possibility. Yes, they're not from the 10 great families because they are descendants. Will we get to see this giant in full form? Well, that would be dependent, I would assume, if any of the descendants lived, and in which case, if they did all live, then either Jahad is a lion mofo, did a really bad job at cleaning those loose ends, or they're able to be reborn in some sort of way. But I mean, I'm sure if they're able to, curtail it to the story somehow, he could make it a possibility, but like it would just be weird based off of the story that we were just told. However, nothing's right or wrong, so I can leave it up in the air for that.
Alley-oop. I mean, mirroring a lot of what Gavin said here, I am excited for the future of Rak's story. I hope that this ability will be good, like it's not just for show, and like he'll really be able to go on par or, with some of the enemies that Baam and Khun are going to face in the future, being that they're kind of the raccoon squad. And with Baam as well. So that would be really cool to see. I do mirror Gavin's thing with it'd be weird for Rak himself to awaken more elemental powers unless there is something to be said again where the passages are inaccurate, the story is inaccurate, and really Rak himself maybe is that, kind of has a white thing going where it's like the other ones aren't dead for whatever reason. He can cultivate that, or that he doesn't, he maybe is the being. You know what I'm saying? Like that it apparently got split. Like we don't know. There's a lot like thrown in the air, a lot of it's speculation, myth, legend, all that kind of thing. But my head is in the camp that it's just him. That's my prediction. Just because I just can't see him with like Rak himself. I couldn't see with like all the elements. I feel like if he had all the elements, he'd have to then combine back into that being. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that being almost acts as this force of nature that kind of stabilizes things in the power. It's like almost this like shaman style, Princess Mononoke thing where that, you know what I mean? Where it's like these beasts that just kind of like stabilize and have this overwhelming power to kind of, balance the scales. So I feel like if he got all the elements, he'd have to go into that form, which it wouldn't be Rak anymore, if that makes sense. That's where my head's at anyway. I just couldn't also picture just standard Rak with like lightning abilities. That'd just be like weird to me. I don't know. He seems like a rock kind of person, but it'd be crazy if he did some last, Airbender or last Avatar thing. But I don't know. If we do see the full form, like I said, I don't think it'll be a mainstay where it's like, oh, Rak found all the pieces. Now this is Rak, and he just follows them around with this like these reindeer antlers and just this lizard tail, and he's like, where are we going next, guys? You know what I mean? Like, again, it just seems a little too ridiculous. I could see maybe some like Transformers thing where it's like, give me all your pieces, and they like big thing to like beat the final boss or whatever to help them and be like, get his power up moment, and then it disintegrates back into like their forms or whatever, maybe something like that.
I just had why I kind of don't want this last question in here in terms of will we get to see it again, because let's be real, SIU doesn't want to draw the normal fucking Rak. Why would he draw a literal Godzilla version of him if it wasn't more than one panel? Like, let's be completely 100% honest.
Yeah.
If we did see it, it would be one panel, and I know SIU's not drawing it because we haven't even seen like legitimate alt fights with Rak to begin with, like at least substantial ones or consistent ones, maybe one or two, okay, but like. Yeah, we ain't getting the full thing. I'm sorry. I'm busting.
You're not wrong. You're really not wrong, though.
I think that it's so first off, yeah, I hope that all of Rak's family is actually dead, only because like no, not like
I know it's just funny the way you said it.
But because like I'm so tired of these stories where they're like, yeah, and we wiped out his whole clan. Just kidding. He's actually got like 12 cousins that are still alive, and it's like, did you kill them or not? Because like. One is fine, but like if there's 6, that's not all of them.
Yeah.
So like, I'm just like Gavin was saying, it'd be like a big fucking over the head of Jahad to be like, oh, I missed a couple. It's like a couple. You know that like it's no. So like
all of them.
I can't have this story. At least in my in my mind, it just doesn't work for me if it's like. Just kidding. They're all actually hiding somewhere, and like they're gonna fuse with Rak and whatever. So I think they should all be dead, and Rak should be just like you said, like he's just the stone part of that puzzle. But I could see, because I've been a big advocate for the workshops coming into play in the larger picture here. A workshop or several workshop scientists, employees, whatever the fuck they are, helping Rak and manufacturing like a makeshift way to duplicate that ability or process.
Oh, it's interesting.
And that it being something that can only be used once. So maybe Rak saves it, obviously, for like a fight with Jahad or a 10 head or family head or something like that. Yeah, because I need this. I need this family to be dead. I can't have it where it's like. Just
cannot stress enough how dead I want them to be. Like dead as a doorknob. 6 feet under.
If you find one, kill them.
Because they're gonna ruin the story.
Or
put them 6 feet deep. Okay.
What if it's some sort of like when they died? It's like some I'm gonna reference it. And I have no clue if it's even right or not. Like Infinity Stone type thing where it's like. X person died, and all that energy was now stored into this like gem or this thing, or like consumable. And it's like, dog, I don't know, but I am gonna go out there and just say.
I was so curious as to what you were gonna say when you're like, I'm gonna use Infinity Stone. I'm like, oh god.
Well, no, weren't they like stones that you gotta like flying around the world or like around the universe?
It's just
they're
funny.
split into different realms, but they're not like. Condensed versions of a person's like power.
Well, either way, I'm just saying they're like little gems along the way, and like like when the X person died, it like formulated into this little thing, whether gem or not, or like I don't know, a goblet for someone to drink out of and get said power. But either way, it's like.
You remember Infinity Stones? All right, so remember how they're stones? All right, we're running with that. So stones are cool.
Remember when Indiana Jones and James Bond went to the Chamber of Secrets and found the Infinity Stone?
Yeah, that'd be a dope crossover though. Don't even say it wouldn't. Well, you have Indiana Jones, like, and then you got James Bond, who's just like, shit. All right, I'll move.
Oh, you're wild.
All right, I'm just saying that
you're drunk.
Go home.
I said I didn't know the reference, but I was learning that it was the Stones.
Listen, I appreciate the effort. You were dead wrong.
A for effort.
Yeah.
I haven't watched. What is it? I don't even know. Don't ask.
Anyway, we're going to end our discussion now. I think there's no better point to end this discussion. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking the video. If you're a veteran here, you better be liking this video at this point. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Hitting that notification bell, sharing with your friends, commenting your thoughts down below. What did you think of this discussion? What did you think of these chapters? Where do you think the story's going? All that kind of stuff, etc. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the AOA Reacts channel. The link will be in the description down below so you can catch our future live streams for Tower of God and any sort of read-throughs or live reactions to anything for that matter. Don't want to miss out on it. Big shout out to our patrons, especially our Acolytes of Anime, Stoic and Nathan. Thank you very much for your support. Couldn't do it without you. And finally, our question, what position is Yuri? There, I said it because the battery's about to die and we don't have time for this. So what position is Yuri? Answer the question and then hit us with your comment and we might just read it in our next episode. But until next time, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll catch you on the flip. Peace.
Peace.
Ninjas are samurais, blazing the kunais. Find me in the leaf of the cloud, screaming out Bankai. We just some ghouls though, who like seeing parts fly.